Welcome to The Peel, where we explore the world's greatest startup stories. I'm your host, Turner Novak, founder of Banana Capital. Before we jump in, a quick thank you to our sponsors who make the show possible, Numeral in Hanover Park. Today's guest is Daksh Gupta, co-founder and CEO of Greptile, the AI code reviewer that helps teams ship faster. If you're very online, you may recognize Daksh as the founder who kickstarted the recent discourse around 996 in San Francisco, what people call working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days per week. He has a surprising view on it that we talk about. Plus, we get into the future of AI coding and how engineering teams are actually adopting AI products today. We also get into Greptile's crazy journey, starting as a school project at Georgia Tech, the ridiculous marketing stunts that actually worked, how they became one of the fastest growing AI startups on the planet, and everything he learned along the way. A quick thank you to my friend Suds, early Greptile investor, for helping brainstorm topics for Daksh. A quick reminder, I publish 2 episodes of The Peel every week. Check out the back catalog of over 100 episodes exploring the world's greatest startup stories, just like this one. Now, a quick word from Numeral in Hanover Park. This episode is brought to you by Numeral. Numeral is the fastest, easiest way to stay compliant with US sales tax and global VAT. It's easy to set up, and they automatically handle all registrations, ongoing filings, and their API provides sales tax rates wherever you need them with all the integrations you need. Numeral supports over 2,000 customers in both the US and globally, and they pride themselves on white glove, high touch customer service. Plus, they guarantee their work and they'll cover the difference if they mess anything up. They're fresh off a fundraise, closing a $35 million Series B from Mayfield, which they're going to reinvest back into the product to make it even better. If you want to put your sales tax on autopilot, check out Numeral at numeralhq.com. That's numeralhq.com for the end-to-end platform for sales tax and VAT compliance. This episode is also brought to you by Hanover Park. Hanover Park vertically integrates fund admin, portfolio management, and the LP experience for finance and investment teams. Most of you have probably interfaced with a fund admin provider in some way. They're a necessary evil for every type of asset manager across not just venture, but also private equity and private credit. They provide bookkeeping and accounting so investment firms can report to their investors on a quarterly basis. What's crazy is they charge hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars per year to basically not screw up your accounting. They stitch together third-party software like QuickBooks, Bill.com, Salesforce, and Excel, and then throw a bunch of bodies at you. And that's where Hanover Park comes in. They built their own accounting system from scratch, which ingests all your firm's data and documents, and their AI-native solution automates all the manual work that drives private market investors crazy. Head to hanoverpark.com/Turner and try the AI native ERP for private market funds. That's hanoverpark.com/Turner and 10x your fund admin. Daksh, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So real quick, for people who don't know, what is Greptile?
Greptile is AI agents that review pull requests with full context of the code, and software teams use us to catch bugs and enforce coding standards across their company.
I think you're like, maybe I'm getting these numbers wrong. The tagline on the site is 3 times faster, 4 times more bugs, or is it the other way around?
So statistically, compared if you didn't use an AI code reviewer, which so for context, like it used to be the case that our pitch was to people that had never used anything that resembled AI code reviews. The hard part was like, what is an AI code review agent? And the first the confusion people would have is, okay, is this like Copilot? Is it like an IDE? Like that, because there's the thing that happens. I think as time goes on, segments, like people have more discerning power and they can like kind of tell things that look like the same thing apart more easily. But at the time, our pitch was, hey, if you're not using anything for AI code review, this is going to make it so you're going to merge your pull requests about 4 times faster, and you're going to catch on average 3 times more bugs. And this is just like statistical data from our first collection of users, our first 500 users or so.
So is there like a little bit of a skeptical nature around how people thought about this originally?
There was, and that's what's so interesting. Like, so right now it feels like everybody wants one of these things, and like and you know, we're like in the hard seltzer era of AI code reviews. Like everyone's doing one, and like. But a year ago, that was not what it was. Like we built this thing. It was like extremely unclear if people wanted it. The only people that wanted it were sort of fringe AI developers that were early adopters of AI coding agents. And they had run into this problem where they were AI generating all this code. And now their new bottleneck was their pull requests were open for way too long because there's suddenly like 100 pull requests at a time. And that was their problem. And like, I like to I like to say that we were like clairvoyant and we saw this and we're like, oh, like there's this fringe AI people and they're having their AI, they're having their like pull requests remain open for too long. And it follows that like when everyone is using AI to generate code, everyone's going to have this problem. What it really was we found like some group of people that had a problem that we could solve and they would pay for it. And then like, we had no expectation that that like number would grow dramatically in the future. And maybe, you know, it's just to some degree, just like kind of luck that it happened to be like just a fast growing market that we weren't expecting. But I think that was what it looked like early on. It's like most people had not fully adopted AI coding in the first place. And pre-AI coding, there was a bit of sort of, there was an equilibrium where people were generally okay with how PR reviews were going. They were producing some amount of code. They were used to it taking about a day or two to get merged in. That was just, it was like everyone was sort of a happy medium. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. There's nothing wrong with it. And then there's just like sudden shift where it's now taking 5 days or 6 days to review a PR because you're just generating so many more. And then people are like, okay, this is a problem. We need to go and fix this. And I think that was the difference between us doing go to market like the start of this year versus now. Is like just night and day.
Interesting. Okay, I want to hear about how it's changed over time, but I guess how does an AI code reviewer work in practicality? Like if I've never tried one before, can you just kind of explain to me how this works and why it's better than doing it manually?
Yeah. So when you open a pull request in GitHub, Greptile writes comments on it, inline comments. So it'll say, hey, lines 12 to 17 in this file, there's a race condition that's likely to happen. Or there's a sort of inverted Boolean or something in these lines. So it'll catch these bugs and it'll tell you what's going wrong with them. And the way Greptile does this is it looks at the lines that were changed. It uses its very detailed index of the code base to figure out what would be affected by these lines. So for example, you've changed some function in a pull request and Greptile will trace it and say, okay, this is a function. It was called by this function, which is called by that function. And that one breaks because of this change. Or it'll say, you seem to have added a new integration, but it looks like structurally and architecturally different from other equivalent integrations in the rest of the code base. So it has a sort of context-aware way of evaluating the changes. Now it'll look at your Jira ticket and make sure that you've done all the things from the Jira ticket and so on. I think an interesting sub-question here is like, well, if you're doing all this stuff with AI, when you're looking at this pull request, you're pulling in the required context and you're sort of catching bugs and issues and in some sense providing, like a lot of people view this as providing feedback on the pull request. Why can you not do this locally? The answer roughly is you can. It might not be as good as Greptile because we built so much tooling and so much, there's so much of a harness that we built around the LLMs that are very, very sort of for AI code review and for this sort of code review type pipeline. But you could do this locally too. And you probably get like 60, 70% of the way there. And the reason not to do it is actually quite simple. It's just people don't do it. It's just extra work. And if an engineering manager or a CTO can have this be a part of the pull request toolchain, I have it almost, it's not technically part of CI/CD in the conventional sense, but in some sense it is part of the post pull request toolchain, then you can enforce this type of checking across an entire company. I think that's what's really compelling about this form factor, where it centrally is applied to all the repos, and then every pull request from every engineer is automatically reviewed through this like AI context-aware intelligence thing.
And how has that changed over time? Like I think you kind of mentioned the products sort of evolved. Like what's kind of been like the evolution?
So the form factor has actually remained the same for a long, long time. So pre-AI code review, well, I guess if you go pre-GitHub, code review looks very, very different, but GitHub introduces the concept of a pull request as far as I know.
Yeah. Do you know how code review works pre-GitHub? How did code review work?
So I've heard this from the elders I've come across in Silicon Valley, but that they would essentially sit in a conference room and like project a like the newly written code on like a projector or a screen or something, and then people literally sit around the conference room and look at it line by line and then like write down their notes.
Really? Okay. And they like predict like this looks like it's probably going to bug out. Like we should do something about it.
So that part didn't change. So GitHub introduced really, really good tooling around pull. So the pull request was just like a good UI for the same thing, and it had like some good sort of workflows around it. But the thing is still that it's like a human has to look at a code and predict what would happen. But it's like kind of the job of like the interpreter. Like we run the program, you'll discover things are going wrong. You'll run and so on. And the human brain is like fundamentally bad at catching bugs because you're asking this like pattern seeking machine to look at a very complex system and then identify things that are out of pattern. It is like we're perfectly incapable of doing it. And to me, like pre-AI code review was a lot like security theater. it had some, and maybe that's not very charitable because there were some advantages. Like it was a good opportunity for mentorship, and software engineering can end up being a very individual role if you don't have good process around collaboration. This is actually an opportunity for collaboration in otherwise fairly siloed role, and people work together on things and discuss things. But as a mechanism for catching bugs, human code review is not very effective. And I think that we call this AI code review, and it's sort of like, it's kind of an entirely new thing. Like it catches bugs, and by doing that, it is kind of just a different thing than human code review, because human code review doesn't really catch bugs. It turns out that like one, AI is obviously much more comprehensive. Like it's applying the same amount of diligence to 10,000 line change as it is to a 10 line change. And there's like the old joke is that like if you do a 10 line change, you'll get 5 comments. If you do a 10,000 line change, you'll get 0 comments. Because people just don't read that much code. Like they're not going to review your thing. People are going to rubber stamp it. And so I think there's, so obviously, longer thoughts on sort of what the opportunity here is, which is we're AI generating all this code, and our systems for validating this code haven't scaled in accordance with that, because we have these sort of archaic ways of making sure the code is correct. We actually spend a lot of energy on it between testing and QA and review. We spend a lot of time making sure that the code we're producing is valid and safe to merge. And AI presents this very fascinating opportunity where we can make that entire process autonomous. I think the reason that code generation might not become fully autonomous is because we still need to express our opinion of what we want. And that opinion is not always rational. And we don't know upfront exactly what we want. We're bad at serializing our thoughts, and we're bad at serializing our taste to some degree into like a string of tokens that you can put into a prompt. And so that part might require a good amount of human intervention, the part we generate the code, just because you at the very least express our opinion. Code review or code validation more broadly doesn't have that problem. You don't need opinion. Like everyone just wants valid code. Like everyone wants the same thing. As code does not have bugs, and code that enforces a certain set of standards. And so that part should actually be completely autonomous. There's no reason a human should be involved in the autonomous step. People don't want to be involved in the autonomous step. I don't think anyone likes the code review part of their jobs. People usually don't like the testing part of their jobs or the QA part of their jobs either. And I think there's a very interesting opportunity here to make that entire thing autonomous.
So if all the code is AI generated, do you eventually get to a point where all the reviewing is done autonomously to your point? Like is there eventually like no manual human code review because you can just kind of instantly review it once it's generated?
So my theory is actually I would go even farther and say that the code writing part will not be fully autonomous. Not because the agents are going to not be smart enough, but just we won't get any better at telling the agents what we want upfront. So we'll have to work with them closely to iteratively tell them what we want, because we're just not that good at telling them upfront. It's the thought experiment I like is there anyone at Salesforce that can write, given enough time, a like sufficiently detailed prompt that can one-shot Salesforce? Well, probably not. It's like a very complex piece of software. And like, even if the agents are perfectly intelligent and capable of like executing instructions perfectly, we just aren't that good at describing stuff that's this complex in a way that we want it to be. On the other hand, code review, again, like that can be fully autonomous. I think that the eventual state where like, we have sort of infinitely intelligent agents and infinitely intelligent models is we'll probably have partially or maybe even mostly autonomous code generation, and then we'll have 100% autonomous code validation. I think that is my sort of prediction for what this looks like.
Like if autonomous code is like, it becomes like the optimal best, and like you maybe have to prompt a bunch and kind of get to do what you want, but it's always like perfect code. Do you even need to review the code?
That's a really good question. So this is sort of connected theory too, which is because I think that humans will be involved to some degree in writing the code because they have to express opinion. Human opinions aren't getting more perfect over time in the way that agents are. So AI gets smarter every year. So I don't think about it. It's like if you're trying to figure out what to build, and then like the intelligence of the agents is an extremely nebulous, unpredictable thing. Like you don't know if these agents are going to get smarter over time. You don't know how much more intelligent they'll get over time. And then even if they did get really smart, you wouldn't know what the second order effects of that would be. Then it's useful to start to look at the things that aren't changing. Humans aren't getting smarter every year. We're not becoming better communicators every year. So we're the bottleneck. I think the bugs will still be human introduced at some point. Today, they're agent introduced to a great degree. Like AI agents create often buggy code. They aren't perfect code writers. And so there's some number of codes, the code that's written, some amount of it, some number of lines of code where like the human's fault propagated into the AI. The AI correctly followed the instructions. Human instruction was wrong, and that's why there's a bug. And then like there's a large number of bugs which are just the agent wrote bad code. The LLMs were bad because the problems are complex and the code they wrote was bad. I think it's probably a half and half. And the second one, which is the AI being bad, and that's why they're being. I think that there's a very, very real chance that goes away over time. Like it's entirely possible, and it's an eventuality that we should prepare for as a company that sort of like serves to make code valid. Is like we should assume, to be safe, the AI will get perfect. It'll follow instruction perfectly. It'll produce perfect code given some amount of instructions. And I think that like taking all of the context into account, the ticket, the documentation, the architecture, the rest of the code base, and then using that to figure out if the code is correct or not, will start to matter a lot. And that part, I think, is sort of where that is the value that we will be providing in the long term, which is a little bit different from the value we provide today.
So it becomes more and more just like making sure the humans, brainwave and thinking is correctly being translated into whatever is being autonomously generated. It's just like helping us convey our thoughts and what we want in a more efficient way, essentially.
Yeah. So you'll produce some code, you'll open a pull request, and then there'll be just like this, sometimes like adversarial agent, which only reviews the code. It only looks at the code and tells you if it's correct or not, and then what's wrong with it if it is wrong. And it's not the one that's producing the code, it's independent. And it's sort of, it's very, very deeply context aware. And it doesn't require input from you. It'll just look at the code. It'll do all this stuff. It'll maybe even generate tests and run them against the pull request, and then it'll say, here's everything that's wrong with this code. Maybe it'll actually not even tell you. It'll just tell your coding agent and be like, hey, Claude Code, like I reviewed this PR that you wrote with this human author. Here are the 3 or 4 things I think that are wrong with it. Can you go and fix them? And maybe ask your human if you need help with some things, maybe some things where opinion matters, and you might want to consult your human. But if not, you can just fix this stuff. And a lot of people do that with Devin, for instance. They'll have Devin open a pull request, and Greptile will review it, and Greptile will say, here are 5 problems. Devin will say, okay, these 5 I can solve. I don't need a human to be looped in. And because Devin is really good at figuring out when and when not to loop in a person. And so it'll just resolve it, and then maybe there'll be another back and forth, and then and then the PR will be merged. Like I think I don't know if you're going to have, or maybe you already have had Adit from Reducto on the podcast, but they're the first ones that I saw using this workflow.
Yeah, that'll have come out by the time this one does.
Nice. Yeah. So I think they were one of the first ones to show me this workflow, where they were like, hey, we just had like Devin open a PR, Greptile reviewed it, Devin addressed the comments, and then it was merged. And like there was just no intervention beyond the first sort of expression of what we told Devin what to do, and then we just moved on to the next thing. And everything else is kind of there was a producing agent, and then there was a reviewing agent, and they just worked together and they did my thing, and then it's merged now.
Okay, so dumb question, or maybe it's a good question. I don't know yet. But like if I'm using Cursor or Devin or Copilot or whatever to build this stuff, why do you need a separate kind of review layer like Greptile? Like shouldn't that kind of, like, it sounds like there's an extra step. Like shouldn't it just become part of the coding agent?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So the first one is that if you ask any engineering org, sort of what are people using, you will never get a single answer. Within an organization, getting everyone to use the same IDE is very hard. So there'll be some people on Cursor, there'll be some people on Cloud Code, some people using Klein, and there's like a long tail of like really, really good, and obviously DevX and Codex and Devin. And so there's a long tail of these really good coding agents and environments. And if we're going to work with these things really closely, which I suspect is going to be true because we'll have to tell these coding agents what to do in an iterative way, the ergonomics of these tools will matter a lot. And developers are very picky about their ergonomics. Like there are some people that are just like, we are terminal people. I use Vim, and so I want Cloud Code. Other people are like, I'm a VS Code developer, and so I'm going to be on Cursor. That is the form factor that I like. And so if you're an engineering org, you need some kind of central validation layer. And you want it to be consistent across all of the different things that people are using. And you don't want the code review thing that you're using, you don't want it to be imposing anything on the developers on what they should be using for writing code. I think people should get to pick their own tools on that front. And then the Greptile coding review agent just turns into a sort of central validation layer.
You're basically making the bet that you're almost like the boring layer that developers are just like, I don't care about that. Just review the code and like, let me get back into my like the hands-on what I'm using, and like you can use whatever the top down chain of command says we should be using for code review, like that's fine.
And people care that we are right, but like that we're right about our comments, that we don't make too many comments, and the ones that we make are sort of very relevant and very actionable that we leave on the pull request. But it's the truth is, it's just not a product that you use every day. It's a product you use like once or twice a week. That's how often you open pull requests, and so you just don't care as much about the ergonomics of it as you do your IDE. Like, yeah, I use Claude Code. I like the terminal. I like the way that I like the way that it works. And I've coworkers that use VS Code, their entire lives, and so like they're now cursor people, and they have a hard time sort of getting out of that. And they are maybe very good at using the keyboard shortcuts, and they just have their like the being able to they look at the code surface, and they just are comfortable with that ergonomic, and that's what they want to use. And so I think that like imposing that a different one would be very hard. I think like not even super large companies that are generally pretty good about imposing tools on people, they also fail to do this. Like developers just want to use the tools they want to use. You can't do anything about that. And it would be, I think it would be bad. It would be bad to force a developer to use an IDE that's different from the one they want to use. I think that people should just be using whatever they want.
And some companies, they like build their own, like they have their own whole entire stack too, right?
Yeah. A lot of companies do. I think there's some, if you're Google, and like I think as far as the last I've heard, people like the Google stack internally, like they like the internal developer tooling stack there. But it's just like there is value in the centralization of it. Like there's probably some ramp up time for Google hires where they're trying to figure out how the internal tooling works. Whereas like at startups, including ours, and also a lot of the more recent sort of, that your sort of newly large companies that are maybe founded in the late 2000s or early 2010s and later on than that, they pretty much have converged around GitLab or GitHub as their source code manager, Git as the version control. Very likely there's like a small number of editors that they have all converged on. There's a lot of value in that consistency because it means that people can move around a lot more easily. Like a developer that's really, really used to Uber, then moves to Airbnb is like, I think they're both GitHub users. So like, it's like they can kind of easily, obviously there'll be internal tooling, things will be different, but like the amount of time it'll take to adopt to the new place will be like a lot easier.
You were going to kind of get into this whole second element of it. I think I kind of cut you off. What was kind of the second layer of it?
Everyone has the tests for their code base on their computers. It's in the repo. And yet companies spend like all this money on CI runners running the code, running the tests sort of in the CI/CD pipeline. Like they're spending all this extra compute, and it's probably like a very meaningful spend for most software companies is running these tests in the cloud when people open pull requests. And the reason is actually quite simple: is that you don't want to rely on individual agency if you don't have to. Like as a CTO, you can just say, hey, it doesn't cost us anything for everyone just remember to run the tests before you open a pull request. If you successfully convinced everyone to do that, you wouldn't need the CI runner anymore. Like you could just make everyone run the tests, and then it's their obviously the people using their computers for incrementally more compute is free, and you don't have to pay for these like runners in the cloud. But one, the one that's slow. Like these computers aren't very optimized for that type of workflow, and second, you just don't know if everyone's going to do it, and people not doing it is very bad. And so being able to do it for sure every time, before this code is merged is very valuable. The same thing is true for code review. Like theoretically, you could, ask, there could be like a local version of Greptile, which has all the tools and everything. And you could rely on everyone going into their CLI and going like Greptile review and then like, current commit or whatever. And it'll just like reviews your current commit. And that would be fine. Functionally, it would be the same product, except the main difference being you can't enforce that, and the enforcement is useful. I think that's where like developers are excited by Greptile. CTOs, VPs of engineering managers are like very excited about Greptile. Like this type of form factor is much more exciting to team leads, tech leads. It's very exciting to staff engineers. The more senior folks are more excited by this. One, they spend a lot of their time doing code review, and second, they are like one of their mandates is they have to figure out how to get their team to produce really high quality code and to build processes and systems that make that be as low effort as possible.
How have you seen engineering teams just like adopting and using AI? Like, is there a certain, if I'm like a forward thinking top 1% engineering org, like what does my stack maybe look like?
It has changed a lot over time. Last year, the state of the art was the startups and the very cool companies they had adopted Copilot really early. And then most of the team around that point had moved on and started using Cursor for coding.
So there was like an enterprise contract with Copilot, but no one was necessarily using it.
Over time, they just sort of slowly bleed to Cursor because Cursor is a superior product at the time, at least, and might still be a superior product today. And this year, it seems to me that so last year, the frontiest company, the people that absolutely the fringes, the ones that were most sophisticated, they were former Copilots and had mostly transitioned to Cursor. Some of the ones that were like a little bit slower, they had some Cursor adoption, but still mostly were Copilot. And then there were ones that were just Copilot, but we didn't talk to them much because if they were still on Copilot, they were definitely not reaching out to like a seed stage startup to do code review. Like that was just not the type of thing you'd do. So everyone we talked to, they were usually, if not on Cursor, they were on Windsurf and they were on all these on these tools. And then this year, it's been very interesting. The early adopters of so now Cursor is like most companies you talk to, like everyone uses Cursor. And then to varying degrees, there's Claude Code adoption. So the companies that were like at the front of the Cursor adoption curve are now have now become mostly Claude Code companies. And in some cases, Codex companies. And then the ones that were Copilot companies last year are mostly Cursor companies today. So it's just like this like moving transition from tool to tool. And like if Cursor builds a equally good long running agent as Claude Code, I'm sure people will start switching back. The really great thing about coding agents, great thing for developers, probably bad for the coding agents themselves. It's very, very easy to switch between them. And you can just kind of decide that you can use this both on the same day. Like, you can use like Claude Code and you can use it at the same time. Like you can have one terminal open with Claude Code. You can have one terminal open with Codex. You can have one sort of Claude Cursor window open. Give all three of them 3 separate tickets that you think they're uniquely suited to solve. Because the prices for these things are so low for what they are. Like Claude Code is the most expensive one. It's $200 a month. It produces like an order of magnitude more value than that at the very least. Like it probably like 100 times more value than that at the very least. Like it's just like there's no question about how that whether or not it's worth it. And like you just you can pay for all of them. It doesn't matter. Like if you're like there's some I use Cursor for some things. I use Claude Code for other. I don't even code that much, and I still pay for both because I use them enough that it's worth it. That is more than worth it. I use Cursor for times when I need like surgical edits, and I use Claude Code for like most of the difficult things. And I'm like very happy with that pair.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me when you see all these people. It's interesting to me when you see a lot of these people kind of like saying these companies like, they have bad margins or whatever. I'm like, okay, just like step back and think about this. If I'm Facebook, just like the all-in cost to employ a good engineer is like $1 million, right? Like I'm paying them whatever, 400, 600, 800K. I'm probably giving them a bunch of stock. Like I'm probably paying them 7 figures. It's an insane deal. $200 like a month. Like they're paying like $1,000 a year for their $1 million engineer. So you could probably raise prices over time. I'm not sure how they're going to do that. You probably incorporate new capabilities and new features that you like charge for, or you can just kind of naturally raise prices like a Spotify or Netflix did over time. But I just think it's kind of crazy to say that they won't.
LLM's costs are going to go down. I don't know. I feel like people have just forgotten. Like, I mean, we were using GPT-4 when it came out. And I had to look up the price recently because it used to be like prices used to be listed per 1,000 tokens. Like that's how you listed prices. It was like $50 per 1,000 tokens, or like $5 per 1,000 tokens, whatever. And like, or sorry, it used to be, I think it was 50 cents or something. So it's 50 cents a 1,000 tokens. It's $50 per million tokens. GPT-4 equivalent intelligent today is like free. It's like GPT-5 Nano is free. Like it's functionally free. And the frontier has also gotten cheaper. Obviously, equal intelligence has gone to zero. Like the same IQ level that we got 2 years ago for very, very high cost is basically free now. But whatever the frontier is also cheaper. Like the frontier, like no model today, no matter how good, is as expensive as GPT-4 was when it came out. All of the models have gotten cheaper. And I can't picture a world where that doesn't keep happening. I mean, it's like a stated goal from OpenAI, that intelligence that's too cheap to meter. Like I believe them that they're working on that. And to some degree they have to. And like, I think the model is just keep getting cheaper over time. Like whatever indictment people have of like Cursor's business, I think margins should not be one of them at all. Like I think they're going to be totally fine. And they can easily raise prices. I think the product is much more worth way more than like $40 a month or whatever they charge now.
So why do you think it's such a big, like maybe this is like a multi-pronged question, but I guess, and you can answer whatever you think makes the most sense. But I guess there's like an element of why do people care so much about it? Like, why is this such a big deal? Why is nobody kind of internalized this? Because I think if you look at those like cost curves, it's like, they drop like 99% every 18 months or whatever the time is. I probably said the wrong numbers there, but it's like coming down significantly. Is like, what's been going on where people haven't quite internalized this yet about the costs coming down?
I think it's just the Occam's razor explanation is that it's like cool and edgy to point out when something is wrong with something, especially when like the thing is so good in all of these external regards. Like Claude Code, incredible product, goes from like zero to hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue in the matter of like a few months. And people are like, well, it's like not cool to glaze it. Like I'm doing it right now. Like I'm glazing. It's a very good product. It's a fantastic product. The Claude Code is AGI. And like, I think that like, it is unsurprising to me that it makes as much money as it does. And you're like, well, clearly if I'm cool, I have to find like something wrong with it. And I'm like, margins. Like that's the one that's like the margins are the problem. But it's like, it'll be fine. The margins will be fine. Uber was like $2 like a ride in San Francisco, right? And they just like raise their price because the value Uber creates is just a lot larger. Like how much would I pay to be moved for free? The actual thing Uber does for you, I don't have to own a car, like because Uber and Waymo, like owning a car in San Francisco is like $1,000 a month. I don't own a car. I don't foresee myself owning a car because between Uber and Waymo, I'm definitely spending less than $1,000 a month on those. And maybe it's not 1,000, it's like $600 a month to own a car or whatever, like including parking and insurance and gas and everything. And like you totally like the value you create is just so much larger. I think just Occam's razor, you need something to criticize, and like this is the only available thing. Like what axis would you criticize it on? People love the product. It makes a lot of money. Like it creates a clear, like a very measurable ROI. Like what do you hate? What could you possibly hate about it?
Yeah, and I think it's like we're literally barely. By the time this comes out, we'll be like barely 3 years post ChatGPT launched. Like it's like we're still figuring out what this stuff can do, and it's not unlike you look at the pricing models, how people price these things. Like that's been changing. Like every year, there's like a new way to price this. Initially ChatGPT didn't have there was no revenue. Like there's no price, right? Like there's no product you could even pay for originally, like back when it first started. So we've really only been like, I think in like for a while, I think like Intercom came out with Fin. There was like outcome based pricing, right? It was just like,
I was just thinking about that, the outcome based pricing. It's like, I've recently just been like really interested in like pricing in general, and there's this book, I think it's a very, very popular book called Monetizing Innovation. It's like I think it's pretty old, but a lot of the stuff applies today, and it says that like pricing models have like two axes: there's autonomy and attribution, and the more autonomy you have, the less useful. So if you have very low autonomy, then you should probably price by seat. Versus if you have high autonomy. And then if you have low attribution, low autonomy, seat-based pricing works the best. And this is like Slack, where like hard to attribute the value created by Slack. It's there, you enjoy using it and it makes communication better, but it's really hard to measure it. And so it's very low attribution. And then it's also very low autonomy in that it's only as useful as the number of people on it. Like it's very directly related to how many people are using it. And so low attribution, low autonomy, like seat-based pricing makes sense. And then you have Fin, which is the exact opposite, which is like very high attribution. You can literally say, here's how many support tickets that we resolved without human intervention. And then it's also very high autonomy. It doesn't literally need a person using it. Like unlike something like Zendesk, where it was useful when more people used it. And so that's the perfect candidate for like outcome-based pricing. Obviously, like I really like this framework for thinking about it. The thing that it ignores is that like your pricing should be compelling for customers. And if customers kind of expect seat-based pricing for your type of product, then there's like, you have to price that in, like to factor in the fact that people just like seat-based pricing. Like in our case, like our product is fairly high, like it's fairly high attribution in that you can see how many bugs it caught. And then it's also fairly high autonomy in that it doesn't really need people. Literally Devin's writing PRs and Greptile's reviewing it. So I don't think there's like much of an autonomy question, and is doing its work independently.
You have AI reviewing AI. Like it's like,
yeah. And even without it, like it's not a co-pilot. Like Cursor is a co-pilot. It works with you. It works independently of you. It corrects your things. It like looks at your code and helps you. So it's not really a co-pilot. It's essentially autonomous. And yet we price based on seat instead of outcomes because our customers expect seat-based pricing. It's just like easier to understand. And we're not really interested right now in like value capture. The state of the company we're at is we want to create really incredible products that create enormous value for everyone. And like how much of it we capture is just like very much a second thought. Like maybe later, and hopefully we'll be at a point soon where like that'll become one of our core problems. And like all of our focus right now is just how do we create something like really incredible that creates like huge amounts of value for our users. And then and we should capture some of it, like as much of it as we can, but like we just don't stress too much on like we probably capture much more if we're doing outcome-based pricing. But I think this like for now, just create as much value as possible.
So this book, it's called Monetizing Innovation. It's a yellow book.
Yeah.
I'll throw a link in the description for people to check it out if they want. So if there's an engineering leader that's like out there and they're like, what should I do to just like get more people to use AI? I know that's kind of like a top-down directive at a lot of companies, like a lot of founders, a lot of CEOs, like we need to use AI because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, fuck, how do I do this? What would you kind of recommend? Is there like a process you found that generally tends to work?
So there's some stuff where like with Greptile where you don't really need people to adopt it, in the sense you just turn it on, you attach it to your GitHub or your GitLab, and then it just is automatically reviewing everyone's code every time they open a pull request. So there are products like this which they just work and you don't have to do anything. Like meeting recorders are kind of like this, where if you have a good meeting recorder, it'll just create notes for all your meetings, and you'll be like, oh wait, what did that person say in that meeting? And then you go and like seek it out. So there are these types of, and when we started out thinking about kind of products we wanted to build, one of our things was we needed something that's an automation, and so it doesn't require people to like choose to use it every day. Like it should just work and it should just automatically be like part of your workflow. And the reason for that was like we don't want this extra challenge of also having to evangelize a product after we've created value with it. Like we wanted that part to be essentially automatic. And then the aspect of sort of like coding agents, for instance, I think they had something in an adoption curve that like companies actually had to like push their people to use them more. What I found very interesting was the person that we talk to at every company, the person that reaches out to us, is always, there's a couple of characteristics. Like one, they're usually pretty senior. They're a staff engineer or a principal engineer, an EM or a VP. That's usually who reaches out. And second, they were usually an early person at the company, or at least a very important person at the company, that has decided that the highest leverage thing they can do, instead of writing code and producing software, is to get more of the team to use AI. Like that is like the highest leverage thing they can do. For instance, at Brex, we work with someone called Jared, and Jared was a very early engineer at Brex. And it's sort of, I think from what I can tell from folks that work at Brex, is very widely respected across the company. Spends like very large percentage of his time getting more people to adopt AI. And the way he does essentially just like to show people the value. Like the thing about these AI products is it doesn't take like a week of using it to start seeing value. Like I think of like the Whoop as like, I'm not wearing my Whoop right now, but I was thinking like Whoop as the obvious example where you kind of have to use it for a while for it to generate value for you. Same, or like Superhuman is a product I love. And like Superhuman, I thought it was like dumb to pay $30 a month for email because email is free. And then I started using it and I was like, I can't go back. But it took like a month. It took like a month for me to like really understand that, like for the keyboard shortcuts to get fast enough that I was really getting the speed value. With Cloud Code or like a cursor, I think within 10 seconds of using it, you'll know how powerful it is. Like it is just the initial hump of like using it in the first place. And if you just get more people to just use it once, it's very likely it'll stick.
Interesting. Okay. A slightly different topic, but people might be familiar with your name if they're, or maybe your face too, if they're pretty online. You had, I think, a tweet or I think you were quoted in an article. I forget exactly what happened, but you kind of started this whole 996 discourse that has kind of picked up a bit. Can you sort of explain what 996 is for people who don't know, and also what exactly happened?
So the context of this was Raya, who is a journalist at the SF Standard, and I think she's great. Her stuff is really good. She writes. I think it's something I said earlier was she writes about Silicon Valley the way like David Attenborough writes about the rainforest. It's just like with this like genuine curiosity around this like strange place. I thought that was really interesting. But so she wrote this article about Burning Man, and what she asked me was, hey, like are people your age going to Burning Man? You know, people in their 20s in Silicon Valley, do they go to Burning Man? And I said, no, actually, like I think everyone that I know who goes to Burning Man is like in their 30s and has been in Silicon Valley for a while. They're like a deeper part of sort of the culture here, and they've been around for longer. And like I don't think the as she called it, the AI kids are going to Burning Man. And then she asked me, you know, what is the general vibe if not that? Because it seemed like, you know, the hippie sort of medicated aspects of Burning Man were such an important part of, I think I'm assuming like 15 years ago, Silicon Valley. And I said that the current vibe, as far as I could tell, was like 996, lifting heavy, not drinking, not doing any drugs. like running and eating steak and eggs, marrying early, like all these like things which are like it's like as I could tell were the vibe. And then a screenshot of that part got got tweeted, and then that tweet blew up. And I think people's interpretation of that was like, this company 996s, instead of like, that's the general vibe of 996. Like I wrote later on, sort of, like to me, like there's obviously like a lot of like hate messages or whatever. And like I don't really care. Like if like I think it's a very bad way to live if you care like what regular, like just like everyone thinks of you, just like people you don't know. So like, and my team understands what we, obviously they live it, so they know like what our culture is. And like my friends and family, that they understand. And like, and the only part of it where I was worried was, I don't want potential hires that would have had a really, really fulfilling career here to mistake our culture for something it isn't, and then choose not to work here. So I did write about it, and I wrote about like whatever culture really is.
So what is it?
It's not literally 996. Like we work a lot. Like we work like usually like people come in at like 9. I think the earliest people start leaving is like probably like 7, but I think people are pretty regular. Like most like my co-founders and I are always here until like 9:30. Usually there's at least a handful of other people that are around at that time as well. And then like weekends, like at least of the 3 of us, me and my co-founders, at least like 2 of us are here like most Saturday and Sunday afternoons. And so like it's not like, I think the problem with 996 to some degree isn't the number of total hours you're working, but like it implies enforcement. Like it gives like 2008 factory in like a third world country. Like that's what it sounds like. I think that's what people don't like about it. Like I think there's 2 things. Extraordinary outcomes require extraordinary effort. I think that's just like people understand that intuitively. And then I think people also understand that recruitment is a sales funnel, but there's a second order effect of that which people don't recognize, which is that means the roles at your company are a product. Roles at your company are a product. Spots in your team are a product. And then our product is like, our compensation's very high, and our stock is like unusually high, like unusually generous for our stage, and base compensation is high. The work is very interesting. The problems are hard, and the team is relatively small. And the signal is strong where, the good investors have funded us. We work with some good customers, and people like the product. Like, that signal is strong. And like we want to build a really enormous company that takes the entire market. Like that is the product. Like if that sounds like, and then you have to work really hard for it. And that's the product. Like if it's compelling to you, then you should join us. Like I'm going to be very transparent about what it is. And the other aspect of it is like the decision to spend like your 20s, your 30s, like working at a company and then spending like the majority of your waking hours, at least during Monday to Thursday on it, is like a very big ask. You're asking for a lot out of a very talented person that can do anything with their time to do this. And the sort of the thing that you're trading for is like the possibility of asymmetric upside from the stock. And obviously that means they need to evaluate the stock. And so during the interview process, we're like, look, like we give you even more information than we give to investors when they're like deciding whether or not to invest in us. Like, here's our last 12 months of growth rate. Here's where our revenue's at. Here's who our customers are. Here is like customer feedback data. You can look at our NPS score. We're going to give you a free account to go use the product. You can talk to people on the team. You can talk to our investors. Many of our investors have been kind enough to take time out of their day to talk to potential hires about their thesis around investing, or where their conviction comes from. We're going to give you all the information you need. Like we're going to treat you as like a very important investor who's going to invest like a lot of their time into this company. And I want before you decide that it's going to buy the stock with your time, like I want you to have all of the possible information you could possibly have. And then the sort of the ideal customer profile of this product, all products have one, of the product, which is the role of working at Greptile, is that you're most likely at a large company right now. And the thing that you want is higher pace, and you want a smaller team, and you want something smaller so that you can have more upside, the potential for more upside. And like if that's what you're looking for, this is great. Like you can always go and work at a company that works like, you can always work at a 934 type company. Like that's all, like it's very much available to you. It's just like, that's not the product here. Like this product is different. And it's not unique. Like the most high velocity startups kind of operate this way. So it's not like we're sort of this like strange way of operating.
Yeah. And you kind of mentioned talking about hiring. How has your kind of process changed over time? I know you kind of described it. It's sort of like a go-to-market motion in a way, like how you think about different things.
Yeah, we treat it very much like a go-to-market motion. So what do you do when you try to make a really, really good sales process? You have really good prospecting. You have very good qualification. I think that part people intuitively understand recruiting is to have like good prospecting and good qualification. Qualification in this case being sort of the interview process. I think the part of sales processes that people forget to translate is it should be like very easy to go through. Like it should be like the minimum amount of effort from the buyer or the potential hire in this case. Like there should be as little effort as possible. We move extremely fast on it. When we know that we're interested in someone after an intro call, like they will get an email from us 30 minutes later saying like, let's schedule an interview. Let's fly you out here. We'll fly you out tomorrow. Like we can get you on the next plane and come out here, and like we'll interview on a Saturday or Sunday. If you have work during the week, we can do like a Saturday. You can meet the team for lunch if you're coming in on a weekday, and like we'll do this 2-hour interview. Before you leave, we're going to ask you for references. We're going to call them the same day. By midnight that night, we'll have made you an offer. Like the first call to offer is like we'll do a ton of work, and we invest heavily in references, especially with engineering. I think references tend to be very good. Engineers are very honest people, and they'll tell you genuinely how they feel about their former coworkers. And we found that like you have to move really fast. People have a strong bias toward the first offer that they get when they start a hiring process. You move extremely fast. I think that like those are sort of the scaffolding of the process. The actual evaluation portion is like we're always iterating it. The important aspects of that are standardized. You can't use AI for the engineering parts. And so we have our own thoughts on this. It's like a long internal debate that led us to this point. But I think the high bit is move extremely fast, make it extremely friendly. And then like after you made an offer, like we're just like, here's all of the information you could possibly need to evaluate us. You can talk to anyone from the team. You can talk to our investors. I'm sure that people can talk to you. And like, I want you to have all the information you need before you invest time with this. Like this is an important decision. And like you've by now you've talked to the team. You know what our work culture is like. You know what it's like to work here. You know the types of problems you'll be working on. I want you to evaluate this place like it's like you're an investor that's investing their time, and then figure out if this is the right place for you.
And you mentioned reference is a big piece of it. Like you really lean hard on. How do you generally recommend doing a good reference process? Like what kind of questions you ask? Like who do you ask? How do you approach it?
Honestly, like I don't think we are very sophisticated in how we do references. We make it very simple. We just text the person or email them that the references that they shared, and we say, hey, like can we get 5 minutes of your time on a phone call? Or if you prefer to just tell me your thoughts on email, that's fine too. Often, especially if they're very positive thoughts, people will just write an email. But on the phone, we'll just say like, how was it? Like, how was this person? How was it working with them? Are they good at their jobs? Are they pleasant to work with? And then there's kind of just like, it's that we just seek glowing recommendation. Like if they're glowing, that's a very good sign. We'd be like, yeah, if they'll offer up, we did one recently for someone who we were fortunate enough joined our team, where their former employer said this was like one of the greatest engineers they'd ever worked with, and what was funny was that they sounded upset on the phone that this person was leaving. Like that was like palpable in their voice. There was like we're happy with this person moving on, but like we were all worried that they were leaving our team, like just from the future of the team perspective. And I think like that's the type of references you're looking for. We're so risk averse around hiring, and I think like everyone is. Obviously, if your engineering team is like 10 people, then the next hire is like 9% of your engineering team. You're hiring all at once, and like we take it very seriously.
Yeah. So maybe you'd kind of characterize like the whole 996 publicity that you got sort of as like, I guess it was kind of marketing for Greptile in a way. You've done a lot of different like marketing stunts over time. How have you kind of like, what are some of those for people who aren't familiar, and like how have you approached them? I think one I thought was kind of interesting was like the energy drink one. I don't know if that was the first one.
That might have been one of the early ones. We made a custom energy drink brand, like a private label energy drink, which was like energy drink for coders. Because there's this like whole world of energy drinks for athletes, there's energy drinks for gamers. And then there wasn't a brand that was like for programmers. There are coffee. There's Terminal Coffee, which is like coffee for developers. I think that's like really brilliant. And so we wanted to, and I think that came around the same time. And we wanted to do like an energy drink. Everyone we know that's a good engineer is a white monster enthusiast, and we were like, this white monster's aesthetic isn't for you though. Like we want to build one that's aesthetic is for you. And so that's what we built. It's like, this energy drink helps you ship faster. We shipped it to a bunch of customers. We put hundreds of them in the YC office. I think the one stunt that we did that I personally enjoyed a lot, and I use the word enjoyed because I don't know how attributable this stuff is. Like I don't know if it helps. Like I don't know if it's useful, but it's fun. And like we don't like, I think I forget this a lot. And thankfully my co-founder Suhoon is very good about remembering this. You kind of have to have fun. You just have to it's supposed to be fun. Like building this thing is supposed to be fun. And this one was, we built a box, we filled it up with cookies, and it had a light activated speaker inside. And when you opened it, on the inside flap was a sweaty picture of Steve Ballmer, and it would start playing the developers speech. And people would open it, and like a bunch of our customers that got it, like put it in their fridge so that every time they'd open the door, the lights would come on and it would start saying developers. I thought that was brilliant. Probably annoying within a day or two. But that's another one. We're always like thinking of like crazy things to do. Honestly, I'm hoping they're useful because we've just been doing them because they're fun. We just do one like every few months.
So how do you come up with an idea? Like, and how do you know if it could potentially work or not? Like, how do you pick? How do you kind of like, what's the creative process look like? And then how do you decide like, this is the one we're going to do?
I think they come up organically. Our entire team eats lunch together because the lunch order arrives all at once. And then like all like 15 of us sit around a table, like a tiny table, and eat lunch together. And it's just like, I did not know this is unusual. Like I thought this is how all companies did it, because I've never had an actual job before. But they're like, I thought this is how all companies did it. But like we sit together for lunch, and actually it's really, really good for coming up with like crazy ideas like this. Because we have one half, which is like the go-to-market side of people, which are pretty technical. And then the other half is engineers, which is their ICP basically. And so like to some extent, like we sort of have the perfect balance of people to come up with crazy ideas. We just come up with a bunch of them. And then whatever sounds like crazy enough that we can see like going viral, and then we just decide to do those. And ones where, and part of it is going viral. And the other thing is like, it sends the right message about us. Like the thing I want people to know about us, like one, we really care about this specific thing, which is like, we really care about catching bugs. We really care about creating a lot of really good software. And like, we like having fun, which is like, we're like a fun company. And like, there's this, I might be getting his name wrong. It was like Rick Ross, who's a music producer. And it was, I think someone asked me like, what is like, how do you make a hit party song or like a hit pop song? And he was like, you have like 2 or 3 people in a studio and they're having a blast. And if you can capture the energy of that room and put it into a song, that's a hit song. If you can capture the fun that the artists are having while making the song, then it's going to be a hit song. And I think that's how we think about like evaluating this stuff.
So how do you measure if it worked? Because you kind of said you don't know if it worked. Like, do you not do a lot of attribution, or you just like, hey, it looks like some more people came to the website, or like scan the QR code on the cookie box, or like how do you measure this stuff?
So I think this is advice we got from Siki at Runway. They said all marketing channels that are attributable are priced in, and they're usually anything that's underpriced is unattributable. And this made total sense. I think anything that's like high effort, so people don't do it, and then it's like attribution is very hard, usually will have better outcomes. Like the total amount of effort and cost of getting this cookie box thing, for instance, is not very high. Like I think like cookies don't cost that much, and like boxes don't cost that much either. And then getting custom speakers was like, I think it was like $2 a speaker or something from China. I think with Terrace maybe like $4 per speaker. And it's like, it's very, very cheap to do this at even a decently high scale. And it's just like, if you saw a LinkedIn banner ad for a company, like you can send that to like 1 million people for not that much, but you won't remember that.
Your eyes like skip over, like you subconsciously see that it's an ad and you just don't notice it.
Even if it's relevant to you, you might have higher attention if it happened to be that like earlier that day you had a quarterly meeting about how like you guys need to get an AI code reviewer. You probably would have a higher chance of clicking on it. But if you get a box like it to your office and it has Steve Ballmer's sweaty face on it, you will remember that forever. Like you're not going to forget like the cookie box that talks to you. Like that you're not going to forget that one. And so like I think the total, when you think of like marketing things, I think of them like, well, obviously they're a funnel. And so the way to evaluate them is like, how many people can you reach and how long will they remember you for? I think is like a good way of like the area under the curve is like basically the total value that you can produce with the marketing activity. As you have stuff that's like very, very wide, but not very deep, which is, I think, canonical example would be Google Ads. And then there's stuff like this, which is you do this. I think we did like 100 boxes because I think more it would be like, it's just difficult to fill up boxes of cookies. We were like a 5 or 6 person team at the time. And it's just like there's only so much you can do. It takes like hours to do that. But I think those 100, of the 100 cookie boxes we sent out, I think like at least a third of them are like paying customers now. And like everyone else, they definitely remember us. Like at whatever point they're looking for an AI code reviewer within the next few months, like they will probably reach out to us and be like, hey, like at the very least, we want to talk to you because you sent us this crazy cookie box earlier. And like it's still sitting in our office somewhere.
Yeah, I think like I see people do pizzas a decent amount. Those are maybe like a little bit easier to scale up because like you can probably just put it in order with a pizza shop and be like, hey, slap a sticker on the box or something. Like that might be a little bit easier.
And the other aspect is like it only works once and never works again. Like we can't do the cookie box again. Well, maybe that one we might be able to do again because I don't think that many people heard about it, and so we could do it because it'll be new to some people. But like Anti-Metal did the custom pizza boxes. I don't think anyone can do it anymore. Like Anti-Metal captured all the alpha on that one. I think you'll just come up with a whole entirely new thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say you almost have to come up with like new food or something. Food seems to be pretty good. I feel like because people will eat it and they'll like spend time, a couple minutes, literally.
Hot sauce is my favorite one, especially if you sell to startups. The hot sauce sits for a long time on the kitchen like counter or like in the, and it was like I think of all of the things in very long shelf life. Coffee, like 12 ounces of coffee in our office would last like a week, but like a 8-ounce hot sauce is like could last a year. Like that could be the whole lease. Like it would just be sitting there the entire time. Like you can't. It's not easy to get through. And the funny thing is, the hotter you make the sauce, the longer it'll last, and the longer you'll have like
True.
the like mental space for people.
Yeah, and you almost need to get like a magnet, just like have them slapping on the fridge, so like every single person sees it every day when they open the fridge.
Yeah, there's something there too, and it's just like how do you get in front of like more people? And this stuff is great, but I think like we waited a long time to do any of these things. We were like, we need a product that people are just telling their friends about because they love the product, and then the fire's already going, and then we're like, what jet fuel can we throw on this? Like, where do we find like what can we throw on this? That's like this thing that's already working.
Do some people you think tried to do this too quickly?
Yeah.
Really, how do you know when it's ready? Like, is it like quote unquote you need PMF to like do this or?
I think so. I think you need like at least like relatively early signs of PMF. Like some people, like I think we were at a place when we did this where we were like, if you start a free trial with Greptile and you're like a real software company, you will sign up. Like you will become a paying user. It was like 70% conversion rate. Like it was like very, very high. And the other 30 were probably like largely explained by just being out of ICP. And at that point it was like, okay, like clearly the next thing we need to do is just get as many people to try the product as possible and get in front of them as possible. And it's like, what are some fun ways in which we can do it? And the cookie box came up, the energy drinks came up, and we did a hackathon where we gave out Venus flytraps because they catch bugs, and we had like a shirt to go along with it with like a big Venus flytrap on it. And we have Everett, who's on our team, who does a lot of growth type things, like figured out how to get, because it's not actually like, they're very tropical plants. So like getting them into California in like the dry weather and keeping them alive is like not that easy actually. Like they're not really for this weather. So getting 100 carnivorous plants, keeping them alive for like a few days ahead of the hackathon and giving them out, and also creating a website where you have like care instructions for the plants so like people can keep them alive for long. And the other thing that happens is you'd think that they'd catch the bugs in your office, but they're actually the pheromones that attract bugs. And so we had more bugs at the end of it. Like we had like way more bugs inside the, and there's like, and it was like this strangely poetic thing where like maybe Greptile also causes the company to have more bugs. It's like, oh, Greptile will catch it. Let me just like sloppily write some stuff. It's fine. And I'm sure that happens. Like a number of bugs go up at some point because people are like, whatever. It's just like, look, we have like a fail safe for this. We'll be fine.
Interesting. Okay. Well, so I know one thing you mentioned was you waited a while to do this. Like it was a long process to get here. I want to kind of talk a little bit about just like that general journey. And I know it starts probably like a lot earlier than people would think. One thing I thought was super interesting back in high school, you were a musician and you had a couple songs that like they charted on Spotify. What's like the story with that?
So I grew up playing guitar. I was in choir in middle and high school, and I was singing a little bit. A friend taught me how to use Ableton when I was, I think maybe like in sophomore year. So I started writing songs, recording them, and then I started to really enjoy it. I think the process of producing music is really fun, and you start to listen to music differently. I think a lot of people that start writing, for instance, it might be just like writing a Substack. You just start reading differently when you start writing. So you start listening to music differently when you start producing music, and it's like. I think people look at me and they're like, "Oh, tech bro, like probably made like techno or whatever, like made like was like a DJ, made like electronic music or ambient music." I actually made like sad indie folk music. That's what I was. That's the kind of music I was doing. I made like sad indie folk songs, and then like I think the second or third song I put out like kind of went semi-viral. I think so. Spotify was. So I was living in India. Spotify was new to India at the time, and so I think they wanted to promote like new independent Indian artists, and so it got on like the Indian indie like editorial playlist. It was like one of the first songs on a playlist. And so it got like tens of thousands of views. I think might have ended up with like low hundreds of thousands. And then the song I put out after that got on the viral 50 on Spotify. And I think it was like at the 14th place or something. And there's like a precipitous drop off in streams after the first 10. So it wasn't like a ton of streams, it might have been like 500,000 or so. But this is like senior year of high school. And I'm like, wait, should I like do music full time instead of like, like maybe there's something here.
And you're still in India.
I was still in India, yeah. So I went, and this was around the time I was like applying to school. I knew I wanted to go to engineering school. I'd grown up like really liking math and science, and my sort of dream was I wanted to build cool things with my friends. Like when people would ask me when I was like 15, 16, like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to learn how to program or build robots or something, and then I want to build cool things with my friends. That's what I want to do. And then this music thing was sort of like potential side quest where I was like, maybe I should do this instead.
And you were in a band too, right?
I was in a band in college. So got to college. I think the band, we would basically play like house shows. There's this neighborhood in Atlanta called Home Park, and it was so these single family houses in the city, formerly constructed for people that were working in the textile industry in Midtown Atlanta. They were set up to sort of like post-Civil War, I think like early 20th century. I think it was like around when that must have been. And so that because it was next to Georgia Tech's campus, became student housing because obviously they don't really manufacture stuff in Atlanta anymore. The textile industry moved out, and that area all became retail and commercial. And then that place where the houses were for the workers became like sort of where the artsy Georgia Tech students lived. So it was like a lot of bands and a lot of like music people, and they were doing shows in backyards, and like people would come and they'd be like a keg, and so we started playing those shows, and it was like this. So the first thing I learned is like I really like programming and I like building things. I think that's really fun for me. And then while running this band, it was like 5 people, and it was like, this is actually like, it's really fun to one because you're perfecting this product. You used to like rehearse like 2 or 3 times a week in like either the music room or like one of our friends' garages, and just like practice. And that's the set list is the product, and you're like refining this product. You're trying to make it the music better. You're trying to pick the right songs that are like fun at these parties, and then you're doing the go to market, trying to book shows at frats, because the frats pay you to play at like their formals, whatever. And the frats are a big thing at Georgia Tech, and then you play like these house shows, which is really fun. And the thing of like you and just a group of 5 people, and you're trying to like make this thing work is like so fun. And in some sense, it was like, okay, like 2 things I learned about myself. I like programming and I like being in a 5-person team trying to make a thing get off the ground. And like that seemed like, I was like, okay, I'm starting to realize that there's like I was very sure I did not want to start a startup in college. I was like, this looks like way too much work. Like, why would I do this when I could just be like at Amazon or something? And then I think the band experience was kind of like, this is actually like, it's really fun to be like a small group of people trying to figure something out and like trying to take something from 0 to 1. And then I happened to meet Suhoon around that time, who's now my co-founder, and he very much wanted to start a startup. He was like he used to listen to like Gary Tan's YouTube channel growing up in the Philippines, and like we sort of decided to go down this path afterwards. But I think the one part of I don't really miss college overall, but like being in a band was great. That was like a really, really fun thing to do.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like people, I think I saw a tweet. It was like, if you could go back to college knowing everything and like, either be cool or like not mess up, or like make better decisions. I was like, I don't know if I would go back. Like I'm kind of, it just kind of happened. It's done. It's like, I'm happy now. I mean, I would have done stuff differently, I guess, but like also I don't really care that much. Like it's like, it's like high school. Like high school, honestly, I wasn't the coolest kid in high school. It's like, it's done. Would I change things? Yeah, sure. But like, I don't really care. Like I'm happy where I'm at today. It's like, it is what it is.
I do wish I'd learned to program better in college. Like I think I think like Suhoon got like really, really good at programming in college. And then my third co-founder, Daishant, got really, really good at programming. I just didn't learn it as well. It's like, I'm actually like not a good programmer now. I think that would have been a really good time to learn how to program really well.
Yeah, that's fair. I probably played too many video games. Like have you ever heard of Major League Gaming?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like went to these like MLG tournaments. It's literally like a team. We competed at Halo 3.
I was going to ask, yeah.
Yeah, so like when you're playing Halo or Call of Duty online, you just show up in matchmaking and you like match with random people. It's literally a team that's playing against another team. And some people take the extent of like you have a coach. Some people, they will literally have practices, and they'll like each map in each game setting, you'll have like different plays that you'll run, how you'll open, like who goes where. There's even levels of like where you stand on the map will influence where the other team spawns. So you're always looking to like control the map based on where people are setting up, like based on like a new weapon might spawn in 30 seconds. You have to like try to shift so you can get back map control, all that kind of stuff. Anyways, I went to like a couple like those tournaments, and we ended up, I was probably like top 1%, but not top 0.1%. And you're like, not going to be a pro video gamer. So, but it was fun.
Like it's something I've noticed with like startup people and like startup founders, investors, etc. Is like, I think one, obviously they're very often we're like very good gamers, but I think they're more abstractly really into learning the meta for some type of winnable game, which is like kind of what you do when you start a startup, is you learn the meta. And like there's like old scripture on the meta, which is like old Polygram essays, and then like you just like start there, and then like you learn the meta for like how to be really good at this. And it just seems we're all hill climbers. We're just climbing hills. We're just like RL machines. We're climbing hills. I have a friend who's one of the co-founders of a company called Gumloop, and his like, I think we were in the same YC batch, and I think like a few days into the batch, we were talking about GeoGuessr, and it's like, oh, you want to come over and play GeoGuessr after work one of these nights? And he was like, wait, you guys play GeoGuessr? And I was like, yeah, why? He's like, what? And he's like, what rank are you? And I was like, I don't think I play GeoGuessr like you play GeoGuessr. I'm like, hi, I don't know. And then this guy, the first like image comes on, and he plays a mode of GeoGuessr called NMPZ, which is no move, pan, or zoom, which is the setting you can set, which means it's a picture because you can't move or pan or zoom. It's just a picture.
So you just have to like the single shot. You got like one shot to guess.
It's crazy. And like the thing will come on and he'll be like, that streetlights is in southern Nairobi. And I was like, what? It's like, have you been to Nairobi? And he's like, nope. I just know that there's like entire website meta. It's like, oh, these bollocks are like only in Barcelona or whatever. And like you just learn like what the different things are there. And like, oh, and the car itself is meta on its own. Where like the type of Google car that took the images. There's like a certain one they use in Ghana, which looks like different from the one they use in South Africa. And you just like learn what they look like for every country. It's like hill climbing. You just like there's a game, there's an objective, and you just learn everything you can about how to get good at it.
So what do you think is sort of the current meta around startups? Like there's there's obviously like the Polygram classics, like build something people want, talk to customers or whatever. What do you think is something that's kind of emerged over the past year or so-ish that people maybe have not picked up on yet that maybe you have?
This one I think might be too specific, but I've been like thinking about this increasingly now. But when you're building AI products, there's like this thing where if you're building, especially for the enterprise or for B2B, people will use the product and they will like determine based on their first 10 minutes of use whether the product is good or not. That was totally fine for like deterministic products, I think. Like they work the same all the time. Like they're deterministic. But like LLM products are different. They're stochastic. They will hallucinate sometimes. They will be bad sometimes. We were trying to predict at some point, like what can we, like we had 70% of people that tried Greptile, they become paying users. I think the question is, well, what is different about the other 30%? Like, what's going wrong there? Are they just like, what is it about them that and we had some theories. We're like, it looks like fintech teams really like Greptile. Like Brex was one of our early customers, for instance. And maybe it's because they care a lot more about details. Like fintech bugs are like a lot worse. Like a bug in like, like Zendesk is not like as horrible as a bug that like causes like a transaction to fail in Brex. Like that's really, really bad. So I think maybe culturally these companies are just more attentive to detail. But honestly, like none of these things held up. Like they're always good counterexamples. The thing that held up was people that had a great first experience with the product. Like it just so happened that the first day that they were using it, it caught this crazy bug. It barely mattered what happened over the next 2 weeks. Like they just had this belief that this can do things. And whether or not it catches a bug the first day is kind of the actual question is, well, did you create a bug that day? If you caught no bugs that day and you got one of those hallucinating comments the first day, you're like, this is a product that hallucinates. And I've like written it off in my head. And so your first impression matters a lot. I think that was not maybe true pre-AI as much. Now it really matters to make a good first impression. And to some degree, you can't like control hallucination. You kind of can, but like, you can't really completely eliminate it. But what you should probably do though is make your product lovable. I think that's like that's the new meta. It's like invest in design earlier. Make the experience of using the product delightful. Make it so that by the time the person is experiencing the product's core value, they are already on your side because they just like they have experienced joy through using your product. So we like obsess over the landing page design and the onboarding flow. We want you to root for the product before you ever even start using it. You go through this entire onboarding process and you say, wow, that was like really delightful. Like everything just worked. And like it was interesting and like it was visually compelling. The design is beautiful. And like, I'm now rooting for this product. And so when I see a hallucination, I will not punish too heavily for it. And when I see it work really well, I will like reward it very strongly versus someone who just has like kind of a broken or uninspiring onboarding. And uninspiring means they'll be fair, and then broken means they'll be like heavily punish the hallucinations and not very strongly reward the positive aspects of the product. I think people's mood really, like you have to really control it early. I think and the sort of tactical advice there is invest heavily in the ancillary aspects of your product. Eliminate the paper cuts. Invest in design early. I think that's like kind of newly important or much more important than it used to be.
Yeah, it sounds like it's like because you can't necessarily always control what their first experience is just like in the actual product. So it's like design scaffolding around how they'll use the product so you can create a moment of delight that isn't necessarily the product, but it is because you designed it that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that.
And so you kind of met your co-founder. Did you guys meet in college?
Yeah, in college.
And he kind of convinced you, it sounds like, we should start a startup. What was that whole journey like from I'm in a band, just kind of like a startup, even though I don't know what a startup is, because I'm at Georgia Tech, it's not really a thing. Like what was that arc like?
So at Georgia Tech, not very common to start startups. I think it is now, but it wasn't even a few years ago. Like there were not many Georgia Tech alum in the YC batches, for instance. Like now they're very well represented. But at the time it was uncommon. Like my friends didn't really understand what I was doing when I started doing it. And like, I didn't really know. Like I didn't really know like what venture capital was, for instance. Like the concept of it wasn't like my idea of venture capital was like what a Shark Tank viewer's idea of venture capital would be, which is you have this business that has a high likelihood of working and then you like sell some percentage of it. I took this class my junior year fall semester, and it's called like the startup capstone class. So for engineering and computer science degrees at Georgia Tech, you have to do like some type of project class. And all of the other project classes were 3 semesters, but there was a startup class that was 2 semesters. One semester you do the startup thing, and then there was like a semester of, I think, like technical writing or something, which is unrelated. And so like, this looks like the lowest effort one. And the more I do this, like to take like the easiest possible classes, the more time there is for me to work on my band, which is like what I really want to do in college. And so I was like, I'm going to take this class because it's like very easy. And like the A rate was like 90% or something. It was basically like a free A. Suhoon took that class because like he earnestly wanted to start a company. And he was like, I'm going to learn how to start a startup here. It's like, obviously, like, you take the resources you have available at university. And so we met in the first day of the class. The professor, Dr. Craig Forrest, said something along the lines of that a third of the projects that started in this class continue working on it after the class ends. Like they turn it into like companies. And I was like, then I think I laughed out loud in that classroom. Like I was like, why would I keep working on the group project when the semester ends? That's insane. Like you stop working on it the moment it's been submitted for grading. And like, why would you, like, in what world would you continue? We started doing it, and it was like really fun. Like I was having a lot of fun working with Sahun, and like we became close friends with that experience. And then we, like, it just, I think like what we're solving a problem, which was, and the problem we were solving at the time was to find a problem that we could solve in a way that would like make us money.
Okay.
And so because we came up with all these, like, and so we were just smart enough and not to do a B2C idea. Because like, oh, B2C is like what people do, and they're like not sophisticated. Like B2B is what the cool kids are doing. Obviously that's changed now, but like I think this is like the like late 2000s, like pre-AI is what people are thinking. And so we build but we were smart enough to come up with an actually good B2B idea, because we'd never been a B. And so it's kind of hard to figure out like what a good B2B idea would be. So we came up with like a series of plausible sounding B2B ideas. So one of the ones we came up with was a customer feedback, a text bot. So it would like text message you after maybe just took like a JetBlue flight, and it like would text you after you took the flight from JetBlue, being like, how was your experience? And it was like conversationally get your feedback. That was like our like brilliant idea. Obviously, like, no one actually wants this. It turns out like companies already have too much customer feedback that they just don't know what to do with anyway. So it's not like a quantity problem.
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea though. As a college student who's like buying a flight, it's like, oh, I bet a business wants my feedback.
Yeah, exactly. You land, and like it's kind of hilarious. It's just like I bet JetBlue would really use my like insights and how they could make their flights better. It's like
free Wi-Fi, like better snacks.
Yeah, like the seats are a little hard. I feel like my lumbar is not being supported right now.
Yeah, you guys should upgrade the seats in all the planes.
It was like, and in my head, I'm thinking like JetBlue gets this feedback, and they're like, "Wow, this brilliant college students figured out how we can fix JetBlue. It's time to get new seats, fellas. Bring this to the CEO."
We need to hire this kid immediately.
Yeah, like maybe this should be our head of product. I don't know if JetBlue is a head of product. So we do this like we do this like sort of plausible sounding startup idea, and like the semester ends, and we're like, oh, maybe we should keep working on this. Like there was this like competition thing that we got into, which you like. I think you're auto enrolled in this competition when you do the class, and so we got enrolled into it. It's called the Inventure Prize. We became a finalist. We were like, okay, let's just keep working on it until the competition. It's like 3 months away, and so we keep working on it until the competition, and this is now like 3 months after the semester has ended, and we're like, okay, why am I so like, what is it? Like, why are we working on this thing? It's like semester is done, and then the competition happens, we don't win, and we're like, okay, we can finally stop working on this now. But then we actually did keep working on it for like a few more weeks. And during that time, we signed up for like another competition. And this one was hosted by Chris Klaus, who it was one of the inventors of network scanning in the 90s. And he dropped out of Georgia Tech and sold that company for like over $1 billion to IBM. And he then donated the computer science building to Georgia Tech. So it was called the Klaus building. At this point, I didn't even know this was like a living person. He's not even old. Like he's like a young person. And I obviously assumed like whoever names buildings, like everyone else who's named a building was like died in the mid 20th century.
Yeah, like Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, or whatever, like some like oil baron or whatever.
But this person like Chris is just, he's like a pretty young. He's like in his 40s or something. He's like a pretty young person. And I think obviously extremely intelligent. And he was hosting this competition, and like the winner would get like $100,000. And so we did the competition, we won, and we were like, okay, so like I guess we should keep working on this at least until we run out of this money. And then obviously $100,000 when you're in college is like infinity money.
Yeah, that could last like 10 years.
Yeah, I think by like over the next year we spent like $8,000 total, because like I think I got a computer for a little bit because I was like, my computer doesn't really work, and then like we had like basically like trickling AWS bills because we didn't have any credits yet, and that's it. That was all our expenses for the next year, and we're trying to find something that works. We're trying to sell this thing. We're like learning because you have to do sales. You have to like, and we're now started reading Paul Graham essays and like learning. Okay, we have to do things that don't scale. We have to like email like 1,000 people a day. And like find someone, like just get in contact, talk to as many users as possible, like potential users as possible. And like just like nothing is working.
And this was still the surveys.
Yeah, we're still doing like text-based customer surveys. And like it's like, in what world would like two college students who have never been in the consumer goods business be like the right people to build this? Like it's just like it just makes no sense. Like that, this is like, why would this be the right? And then, but the semester ended, and we were graduating, like about a year after that, and we decided, hey, like let's just go full time. Like, just let's try something. Like, so we were already working with like the DaVinci 2, DaVinci 3 era of OpenAI APIs, and they were really, really good. And then ChatGPT came out, and it's conversational. And like, well, this seems very relevant to what we're doing because we're doing this like text-based thing, and they've like used RL to make these things more conversational. Like post training seems to have been working really well for this type of like conversational chat-based use case. And so we're like, okay, it seems sort of like this crazy coincidence that we would graduate with computer science degrees right as like one of the biggest transformations in the history of technology is happening. This is like 2023. And so like we should at least attempt going out to San Francisco and like building things there. We managed to raise a little bit more money, convinced my college roommate of 4 years, who's one of the smartest people I knew. She's like, hey, you should become our third co-founder. All three of us should go to San Francisco. There's like this crazy thing that's happening there, and we should be part of it. We should build something.
So had you decided that you were going to do code review, or like were you still kind of like, we think we probably need to try something else, but we don't know yet what it is?
At that time, I think we still hadn't lost conviction in the text-based customer feedback thing. And the funny thing was we didn't lose conviction because investors funded us. And we were like, well, investors funded us, it must be a good idea. And what we didn't intuitively understand is investors were funding us partly because it's like the potential of us to find a good idea. And it was not really validation for the idea. That can only come from customers. And so like that was not the correct thing to. And I think it's like sort of a canonical young founder mistake is like you misattribute in investor validation as customer validation when those serve very different purposes. And so we came out to San Francisco. So I was sending investor update emails. We're one investor. So I would send this person an email, I would send Chris an email every month about what happened that month. And I still send like monthly investor updates, but like obviously like now to more investors. And I think someone told me we should start putting our numbers on top of the letter. So the letter was just like this, like narrative. It was like a story every month. It was like not very compelling, but it was like start putting numbers on top. Like put your revenue, put your cash, put your runway. And we moved to San Francisco. Suddenly we have real costs because we just really had underestimated how expensive it is to live in San Francisco. And we were all living in the same room in this like horrible Airbnb in the south end of San Francisco. We didn't have that much money. It was starting to run out, and our revenue was zero. So we had like month 1, we arrive in May, 0 revenue. Month 2, June, 0 revenue. And we're like, oh, this is going to be a problem very soon. We should probably, and like, as it creates this very strong urgency that we just didn't have when we were in college. And we're like, okay, we need to like reset ourselves. We went to this hackathon. Scalia did a hackathon mid-July of 2023. And we're like, we should just build stuff that like, because we're clearly not the right people to build this consumer consumer feedback type product. We're just not the right people for it. But we are programmers and we're like early adopters of these LLM APIs. And so maybe there's something here that we can build. And we decided to build a code-based chat product. That was our first idea. We're like, it would be really interesting if you could put a GitHub link in and start chatting the code base. We have struggled with operating on large code bases and finding where stuff is and so on and so forth. And so like building that would sound like really, really compelling to us. So we built that. And and that day is when YC for the first time ever did early applications. And so at the hackathon, we're like wrapping up. I've just finished my bits and I think we have like an hour left. And I see this tweet saying that YC is doing early applications. And so I was like, it'd be pretty funny if we just applied with this like hackathon project that we're like not even completely done with. And so we applied to YC with this. The next day, we didn't think much of it. It was like, we're probably not going to get in. Like we just applied with like a hackathon project. The next day we put it out. We put a Stripe link on it. And we were like, let's monetize this thing. I think within a few days, because it seemed to like early users seemed to like it. The first couple of people we showed it to, and then it started growing, just kind of automatically, like grew like a few hundred, and then 1,000, and then $2,000, $5,000 a month. Like the revenue just kept kind of growing. And by the time we did our YC interview, we had 100 paying users, and like this is like I think we got interviewed maybe like 2 months after the application, and we got in and we did YC. During YC, we realized code-based chat is actually maybe like not the correct startup idea because it doesn't actually seem like people, like companies want this thing. Like maybe individual developers do, but companies don't. So we should find something companies want.
Yeah, the true B2B.
The true B, yeah. And again, well, the funny thing is like we were still not equipped because we not even had actual software jobs before. So it's not like we knew what a software company might want. But at least we were a little closer because we were programmers. And so we knew what programmers wanted.
How did you figure that out? Like how'd you figure out maybe no one gives a shit about chatting with the code base, but they want to be able to see it in some sense or see the reviews?
So once we tried a bunch of stuff. So we're like, okay, so we've taught, so the thing with the hard part about code-based chat is getting a large language model that has a very small context window relative to the size of the code base, how to make it understand a large code base and reason over it. That's the hard part. And that's what we built all this tech to do. Like I had a background in semantic embeddings. I'd done that stuff in college. And then Soon and Vaishnav were both programming languages nerds. Soon was in the programming languages club at Georgia Tech. So he had this sort of like sophisticated understanding of syntax trees and call graphs and whatnot. And so what we were good at was creating a sort of, teaching these models to understand large code bases. And then chat was the obvious thing to do. If you've taught an LLM how to understand a code base, the obvious thing is you build a chatbot so you can talk to the LLM about the code base and it understands what's happening. So we were looking for other things to do. We said, okay, maybe it would be compelling to make this like an on-call assistant. Like maybe you're trying, maybe there's like an outage and the engineer's trying to figure out what went wrong. And so you're trying to quickly figure out through a code base, like where the issue is coming from. That's one potential path that would be helpful in. But then that just wasn't like none of these things. Like we talked to QA engineers and SDETs and SREs and everything, and just like no one just really found it that compelling. Like whatever ideas we were coming up with, so we just decided to build an API because people were asking us for an API. They're like, "Can you build an API which is just like the OpenAI API, but then like you add this parameter, which is your like GitHub link, and it just allows you to talk to to like essentially have context aware LLM APIs." And so we built the API. And then a lot of our customers started using it to build some version of a code review bot in 2024. So this is like summer 2024. We put out this API. The API understands your code base. And then people are using it to build a code reviewer to like review their pull requests in GitHub and GitLab. We talked to them. Trying to understand why they were doing that. And they said, we adopted Copilot and Cursor really early. And now we have too many pull requests. We just have too much code to review. And so we have to build these automations for it. And like there isn't really an AI code review type product that exists. And that sort of, I think, was at the moment where, again, like if I can pretend to be really smart and say we figured out that like everyone was going to need this at some point. But like in reality, like this is a product and like we found like 3 people that want it. And like that means we can get 3 people worth of revenue. We can get like 3 customers worth of revenue. We make 3 people happy and we can capture some of that value.
Because you were like wandering through the desert and like found water basically. And you're like, we got to drink. Like this is something.
We found like just like a glass of water. And like a lot of people find glasses and they're able to extrapolate that there must be a well nearby. And then like we weren't doing that. We just wanted a glass of water. And so we picked up the glass of water and we started drinking out of it. And it was still months later that the takeoff actually started, which is like, so now this is July. We decided to do a code review. We kept it in beta until December. So like 4 or 5 months. I think we had maybe like 70 or 80 teams using it by that point. And then from there, it just exploded from there. Like in December, we put it out. And then in like 9 months, there were like 1,000 companies using it. And it was just like this crazy, like large companies that we work with now that I would have never imagined be able to work with in the first year. I think like it was just this. It just felt like just like dumb luck that we was like we found the glass of water that happened to be like from an ocean or something. It was not like a like we could not have predicted that this thing would have like the intensity, like this category of product would have the intensive product market fit that it does.
So why did the adoption take off? Like, were you limiting it when it was in beta? Like you couldn't sign up and suddenly you're just like, self-serve, you just start using it if you want and it kind of spread? Or
you could always self-serve. So it was like the only thing that changed is like, I think this is kind of the crazy thing. Like industries have very strong mimetic desire. So around this time, we were now about 18 months. I think the adoption curve for AI code review lags behind about 18 months, the adoption curve for coding agents. So people started using like coding IDEs. And about 18 months later, every team that adopted it, about 18 months later, they were like, we need an AI code reviewer. It's just how much time it took for it to permeate through the entire company. And it took about a quarter or two for people to realize this has killed our time to merge. Like we have too much code review now. And we need like something to like fix this with. And I think people couldn't picture that like, and this is like, when we started selling an AI code reviewer, people couldn't picture what that looks like. Like they would ask us how it's different from Copilot. And we were like, well, Copilot generates code. Like we review code in a pull request. And they're like, I don't get it. Like, why is that different? And people couldn't picture this thing. And then some companies started using it because they had this real problem and everyone had this problem and some companies started using it and everyone starts using it. I think a lot of it is just mimetic. Like there are a lot of rational things that everyone should be using that they don't. Like there are products that exist that solve people's problems, and then people just still don't want them. And then there are some products of those that get to some critical mass of early adoption, some spark, and through mimetic desire, it just spreads, and then everyone wants it. I think that's kind of just what's happening here.
Yeah, there's probably some element of you just probably ask a couple friends, and if a couple people all give you the same answer, you're like, cool, I'll try this one. Seems like the best one. How did you figure out the pricing? I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, but like, what was the process generally of figuring out what to charge for it?
Honestly, with pricing, we've kind of been very unsophisticated. We just said we want pricing that is very customer friendly. Customers understand it very easily. They look at it and they're like, okay, this makes sense. I can predict how much it's going to cost. I can kind of compare it to other things I pay for and see how much better or worse it does. It just makes sense to have seat-based pricing with this type of product. Like people are used to paying for GitHub per seat. People are used to paying for Cursor per seat. It just made sense to price it this way. I think what was sort of unusual about this wave is, again, like pre-AI software, you used to just help you do the thing, and then AI software does the thing. I think that's like the big difference. And when you do the thing, you can charge for the job, not for like assisting the job. And charging for the job is better because it's more attributable. And so you can have like we say about marketing, like marketing that's attributable is priced in. Marketing that's not attributable is usually underpriced. And the same thing is true for software, where software that is not attributable, the value is not attributable, is usually like significantly less expensive. Like for Slack is a good example. Honest to God, Slack is worth more than $7.50 a month per person. Like it creates more value than that in a month. It's just hard to attribute it. And so that's why it's cheap. And the other end of the spectrum, you have like Datadog. Pretty easy to figure out attribution for Datadog. And they're able to charge for like the outcome. They're able to have the scaling charge. The easiest one is Stripe, where it's like, we help you facilitate that transaction. And so we take a cut from that transaction. And it's like a perfect amount of it. It's extremely attributable. And so they can basically take 3% of your revenue from you, which is like really crazy when you think about it. Like 3% of your revenue goes to Stripe. And yeah, whatever, like, part of it goes to interchange or whatever, but like, you are kind of giving it a Stripe to begin with. And so I think that like, I have a feeling that over time, this industry will kind of move towards outcome-based pricing. But for the time being, it's like, it just keep it easy. Like you make it easy to buy, like let customers buy it easily and spread first. I think like for now, it's okay to leave a bunch of value on the table that you don't capture. As long as we're creating enormous value for customers and they're paying us an amount of money that they see as non-trivial, we can get investment in Signal in other forms. Like we're talking to a large public crypto company, and like we're doing this like sort of trial with them, and it's like palpable how much they care. Like they're like going really deep into making sure they're getting as much value from it as possible. They're building all these integrations. They're changing their like life cycle around how they do code reviews for this. And like that is the PMF signal I need. Like we're sort of at the final points of the stage where revenue to us isn't like intrinsically valuable. It is valuable to the extent that it signals to us what is worth and not worth building. It is an information seeking activity to collect revenue. And as time goes on, I think all companies sort of move from like an expand stage to an extract stage. And I think there it starts to matter more and more, like how much pricing, like exactly how you price. And it's possible that we're sort of close to getting to that place, but I don't think we're there yet. So right now, just like keep it easy. Just don't worry too much about creating too much value.
So then how did you kind of get that first big enterprise customer?
Every customer we've had just came inbound, and they usually heard about us from a different customer. And then sometimes they heard about us from like a blog post. Like there are blog posts where people have talked about comparing Greptile to other products, or there's blog posts where people have just done like a review of the product, and there's like some developer's blog, or like someone tweeted about us that's a customer. And like Brex's CTO recently tweeted that like this was the best code reviewer they tried, and like that's where all the like a bunch of traffic came from that.
Yeah. I actually DM'd him, I think, when I saw that tweet. I DM'd him. He didn't get back to me, but I was like, hey, what do you think of this? I'm having Daksh on the podcast. Like, what do you think?
Brex is a phenomenal company. Like we're Brex customers, and like they're just working with our engineering team. I've gotten like just so bullish on them. They're so sophisticated with how they do AI. I think they're when you talk to the people there, it doesn't seem like it's hundreds of engineers. Like it seems like a 10-person engineering team is extremely locked in, and like they've been able to do this at the scale of hundreds of engineers. And I fully believe, based on the people I've met there, that they'll be able to do this at like 10,000 engineers if they ever need to.
Wow. Okay. So it's just a function of like people, a lot of like self-serve customers kind of discovering the product organically through word of mouth, socials, blog posts, etc. Like, did you do any influencer marketing or not really?
We're starting to do it now, but historically we haven't. We did technical blogs, so we'd solve hard problems or at least interesting problems, and they were sometimes at surprising results. So like one of the early problems that we faced with building an AI code review bot is that they're very nitpicky, because LLMs are very verbose. So they comment on things that are technically true, but they're just like kind of a nitpick. And like no one likes nitpicky like coworkers either. Like no one likes the person that's like, oh, actually, like you're missing this like very specific way of doing logging. Like their log formats a little bit. I was like, little things like this. So like, oh, don't use any in TypeScript. It's like, it's whatever. Like sometimes it's fine. And like people found that to be very annoying. I think one thing about LLMs is like the lack of saying something smart does not tell you a person is stupid, but saying something stupid tells you a person is definitely stupid. And so when in doubt, you should just not say anything. And I think that applying that to LLMs is hard because they're paid by the token. And so they're like incentivized to just keep saying stuff. And there's there's this paper recently from OpenAI, from Anthropic, which is like, why do LLMs hallucinate? And it's because like if the reward function is likelihood of being right, then guessing anything at all confidently is like a better on that test than saying I don't know. Like there are no points for saying I don't know, but there are some points for being potentially correct. And so like teaching the code review bot to not make nitpicky comments was like a surprisingly difficult problem. We wrote like a blog post about how we did it. And like that went viral. That was on the front page of Hacker News. A lot of customers came from that. I think with developers, our simple thing is like developers don't like being sold to, but they like trying new stuff. They like trying interesting things, and they like reading and learning. And so we just produce content that is like things we're learning. We're solving interesting problems, and like we learn stuff while solving those problems. And we write about them. That's ended up being like the most powerful way to reach customers. Just create value, write interesting stuff. We've been on the front page of Hacker News probably like a dozen times by now.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like Hacker News is one of those beasts. It's just like hard to figure out. But when Hacker News likes you, you just got to ride the tiger, I guess, and like just love it.
Just write things that are surprising to you. I probably spent too much time on Hacker News, and like I have. And once you start writing and you start wanting to be in the front page, you start noticing what stuff you click on, and you're like, what are the patterns here?
What are?
It piques your curiosity. That's the main one. I think like curiosity is the currency of Hacker News. If you can pique someone's curiosity, they'll click on it. And so like going into technical detail about like pulling back the curtain on the types of problems we're solving. Like most people aren't working on like building B2B AI agents. Like most engineers are not working on that. Obviously, people are working on different things. But there are interesting insights that come from working on this, like weird problems you face, things that break in interesting ways, and that are like interesting stories to share. And I think those things end up doing the best.
Because people are just curious to like know what all's out there, how other people are solving problems, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like if I were to see a post that was like about Shopify breaks when people do drops. Like I was listening to, I think it might have been like either a podcast or it was maybe a Hacker News post, which is about like the hardest technical challenge Shopify had to solve was that there became a trend in e-commerce to do drops. And drops are like the enemy of a company that's trying to scale an e-commerce store. Like that's the opposite of what you want. You want like even predictable traffic, not like enormous out of pattern spikes, and like scaling to support those. And it's like, that sounds interesting. I wonder how they did that. Like I wonder how they made it so like Supreme could drop something in a Shopify store and it didn't like crash the entire website. Like that sounds like a really, really interesting problem to read about.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you remember how they did it?
I don't know. It was actually there was like a handful of things that like separately break, like the like DB connections break and so on. So they went into like detail of that. like how that stuff breaks. Actually ended up not being as interesting as I thought. It was like a lot of boring problems to solve. But I clicked on it and I read it and I was like, and like the thing the thing I gleaned from it, like my conclusion was, wow, Shopify has very high quality engineering talent. So if I was a very smart engineer, I would be like, I should work at Shopify. Like, I'll probably learn so much. So if that was the purpose, which is engineering blocks to some degree are like part of the recruiting mechanism. And so like it did that. I was like, if I was a smart engineer or I wanted to be better at engineering, I probably want to go work at Shopify. Like, it seems like a really interesting place to work.
Yeah, that's fair. One thing I kind of want to hit on before we jump off. So I know you've kind of had like a little bit of an interesting fundraising journey just from Georgia all the way to San Francisco, all the way up to today. My friend Suds was, I think, one of the people who met you when you were still in Georgia.
Right when we moved to San Francisco. So I think he was one of the first people I met in San Francisco. Yeah.
Okay. And then how did you kind of raise the first little bit of money when it was just, hey, we've got this survey thing? What was generally like the whole process?
We honestly like just told people about it and then they wanted to fund us. And I think, I don't know what it was. I think all three of us are just like very high energy. And I think people respond well to that when they're funding something that early. Like there's like the product, like I think a lot of people that funded was like, well, this is obviously not going to work, but these people seem so high energy. I'm sure they'll figure something out eventually. And like they seem like they course correct when they receive new information and they're like, and like, so Paul Graham was one of our investors and he said something about us and more broadly founders that went to Georgia Tech, which is they have a very high effectiveness to entitlement ratio, where it's like a public school in the South. It's like you don't become entitled from going there. Like you become entitled when you go to a school that's like prestigious, like Stanford or something. It's like, I'm entitled because I went to Stanford. And I understand, like it's very hard to get in. It's one of the best institutions in the world. Like, I think it's like not crazy to come out of it a little bit entitled. But and you also, like Stanford people also very effective at the same time. I think Georgia Tech, because it has become a good school before it become a prestigious school, and also by virtue of being sort of a public school far away from Silicon Valley, far away from New York, and like its own isolated corner, ends up having like a high ratio. So I'm guessing that's what people gleaned. I'm not entirely sure what it was. Getting into YC was just, I think was just like the slope. Like when we applied, we were like, this is a hackathon project. We're almost done with it. And then in the interview, we were like, update, we have 100 paying users now. And like it's growing like 20% week on week. I think that was like, and I think they could probably also figured out that the code-based chat thing was not going to work. But I think there's just the point was that like, we'd probably do something else if this didn't work. And like, I think there's like, you know, we're decently smart, but we work harder than anyone. And I think that's what people gleaned early on.
I think you raised money from a pickleball game. Is that true?
I didn't, but one of our, like a couple of our early angel investors were like huge pickleball people. And so the first time I played pickleball was here. I'd never heard of it. Like this is how like out of like this is like 20 how out of it like the rest of America is from like what's happening on the coast. Yeah. I had never heard of pickleball. I fully thought that it was like I genuinely remember thinking this. I was like, this must be like you make like it must be a food. You make a ball of pickles or something. Like that's probably what this is. And it was like, no, it's like a game. It's like and then it was, I think someone described it in such a cryptic way. They were like, oh, pickleball is for like when you're like too poor for golf and too unathletic for tennis. Like, that's who pickleball is for. And I was like, well, why would I play this game? And I played it. I was like, this is a lot of fun. This is a really fun game. So I got into it because of an investor. I think it's more accurate.
Oh, got it. Okay, that makes sense. And then I think you guys had like an interesting story with dilution and kind of YC. I don't actually know what happened, but when I was talking to Suds, he mentioned to kind of have you talk about that. What is the significance there?
So we raised a little bit of money before YC, and then we raised money after YC as well. And then the question was like, should you do YC if you already raised money? You clearly can raise money. Why would you do YC? And you know, we're very diligent about not over diluting. And you know, we spent sort of a lot of time at our Series A. We didn't fully, like, it was not the first thing we optimized for, but it was one of the important things to us, was to like minimize the amount of dilution we're taking on. And so we raised less than we could have. Like, people offered us much more money than we ended up raising at the Series A, and we wanted to like suppress that amount as much as possible. But I think and maybe this is helpful for people that are like, well, why would I take the 7% YC dilution when I could just like do something else and just raise the money outside of it? I think it's hard to overstate like how valuable it ends up being in the long term. I have a cousin that worked at he's a phenomenal engineer. I had like I think 10 or 12 year career across different companies. Recently started as a staff engineer and then later an engineering manager at Coinbase. And he was talking about, it's like Coinbase is the largest company I've ever worked at and is the one that feels most like a startup, like extremely high velocity. And like everyone is so locked in. And then every interaction he's had with Brian Armstrong, there has been like this guy's got his eye, his eyes are on the ball. Like it's nuts how locked in he is. And I think that there, and you hear the same thing about Tony at DoorDash and so on. And I have a feeling from what I can tell, there's like a reprogramming of the brain that happens when you do YC, if you do it correctly and if you do it like in an engaged way, that just like is like serves you forever. And that's sort of like the intangible benefit. I think the dilution pays for itself when you raise like a higher valuation. Like people complain about YC companies, like rounds being too expensive. And like as a founder, the 7% you just get back when you raise at a valuation that's like 2.5 times higher than what you would have ordinarily raised at. But I think the better way to think about it is like, what do you get in return for the dilution? I think what you get for YC is worth it. I think it's very hard to justify like increasing your dilution usually, but I think this specific one, like with hindsight, now I can say with confidence that it's good.
Do you think the way to kind of get around YC dilution is you just sell less of the company in a following round? Like you don't have to sell 20% of the company in a specific round. That's generally just like people generally do, but you don't have to.
Yeah, you don't have to. I think you can raise less. We said no to almost all. Again, the seed round, we said no to most checks. We like initialized, invested in us at the time. And the only other ones, we said no to every other angel. We only took 2 other ones, which were JJ and Fleelman and Rich Aberman. And just because we just liked them both, I think they were awesome. And they've been like incredibly helpful over the last years. I think it was like 100% worth it. But we like every other firm, they were like really, really great investors. And it was like, I'm sorry, we don't have room. And we don't need more money than this. And I think to some degree, we probably still ended up raising too much. But obviously, like I like to be on the safer side. I think the idea of having like 18 months of runway as the standard is insane to me. I think we definitely should have more than that, like if possible.
Oh yeah, fair.
Yeah, I think I just like I don't need the extra stress beyond everything of just like we also might run out of money. Like I think that I'm okay diluting a little bit more if I can just kind of know that we're safe on that front.
Yeah. You had a pretty interesting way of framing how you just think about fundraising in general. You kind of think about it as like dating and building a credit score. I was going to ask you, like, what does that mean? Because you mentioned I don't actually know. So it's like an interesting way of thinking about it.
A lot of this is just like sort of received wisdom around seed and Series A and stuff. But like, I think early on raising money, there's investors that are just like good people. And you'll probably like through references figure out who they are, and obviously YC has this, one of the advantages of it, you have this network and you can figure out who the good people are, and I think just raise a little bit of money from them, just enough that you can survive off of it. If you think you should raise less because you want to create urgency and pressure, I really think you should find another source for that's less catastrophic. Like another source for the urgency. I think running out of money as a source of urgency seems like a crazy thing to play with. Like it's just like maybe like I don't know, find like a different place to get your urgency from.
Yeah, you literally like you run out of money, like you just die. Like you can't.
Yeah, that can't be the thing. Like, there has to be like a less insane way to be urgent. And for us, it's like we'll lose the market to someone else. Like that's the urgency. Like we don't need the urgency of like running out of money. Like we're totally fine on runway, and like we have we're very prudent with our spending and like we've kept a very limited headcount and everything. I think it's Series A. The advice that I received from Brad, who's our partner at YC, was it's like you might, if things go well, you're going to work with your board partner very closely for like a decade or more, and that is like it's a 10-year permanent relationship essentially. Like over that course of time, you can't change your mind on it. Like this person's going to be on your board forever. So you should treat it with that level of gravity. It's like a marriage in some sense. And so I was like, well, what would I do if I was getting married? It's probably go on like dates and like meet people, get to know people. And so I just spent the next few weeks just meeting all of the great investors that invest in like dev tools and infrastructure type things. I got introduced to Eric at Benchmark through Mike at SV Angel. And he within our first meeting, it was extremely obvious to me that this was like exactly the right person. And thankfully he felt similarly. And so I think that ended up working really well. But I think like it's obviously, it's increasingly less common for people to do board seats at Series A. But I think it's still frequent enough. And it's like, I think it really matters to getting that right. Like Eric and I, obviously, it's really early days. We've only been working together for like a couple of months, but the conversations are just fruitful. Like I come out of those like in the 45 minute conversations and I'm like, there's like a new thing for me to think about that I think is really compelling. And there's like more clarity than we had when the call started. And obviously like references there matter to everyone who'd worked with him, whether it was Spencer at Amplitude or Saji at Benchling, and everyone else I talked to was just like, this is the greatest investor of all time. Like they've created enormous value over the course of the last 10 years of working together.
Yeah, Spencer's a big Eric fan. Actually, you mentioned you listened to the episode we did together. Spencer was actually the one who told me to have him on. He's just like, you got to have Eric on the podcast. I was like, all right.
I really liked that episode.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, one thing I've been trying to weigh is kind of founders versus investors. Personally, I think it's more interesting to just talk to people who kind of like built stuff. So I've been kind of leaning, if I'm talking to an investor, it's like you kind of like created something. There's a long list of investors who are like, hey, I want to come on the podcast. So I'm kind of like always fighting them off of like, so I've been trying to figure out like, what is the most interesting things to get investors to talk about? Like, so what did you like about that episode? Just curious.
I think part of it is just Eric's been a founder before in the internet era. I think the thing I enjoy most about talking to investors is just that they're like, because they're older, they were around the internet era and then the mobile era. And so there's just like stories from them that I think are so interesting. Like I think we could learn so much from that era of time. Like the internet companies came, there was this frenzy, and then like 90% of them died, but like Amazon and Google did not die. What did they do? And how do I do that? Like whatever, like what can I learn from what they did? And like, how can I not be one of the 10,000 companies that died and instead be one of the companies that became like really large, important, and influential? And like, I feel like we don't pay enough attention to that. And like, I was not around then. Like the internet bubble burst before I was born. And like, like all these companies predate my time, obviously, but like Eric was there. Like we have office hours of Polygram every now and then since he invested in us shortly after the batch. And like, he was there. He was in the middle of all of it. He was at Yahoo. He sold his company to Yahoo at the time. And like, there's just wisdom from that era that comes. And with Eric, it's like I don't know if he was the one that said this or if someone else, but the sort of the thing that investor adds to your company is that like, they're not in the trench with you, but they're like at the surface level so they can see the other trenches. And they can like say, hey, your trench, I know sucks, but like, I'm looking at the next one over there. And that was also pretty bad. So like, but this third one looks fine. Like maybe try that one. And it's just like stuff like this. It's like the wisdom you get from a top-down view and the perspective you get from like working with all these different companies. I would actually argue that I think like investors actually are good podcast guests sometimes, or maybe even often. For one, they're just like better at talking. It's like such a much larger part of their job, I think.
Yeah,
they're like
fair.
It's like they're better talking about like more abstract things. Like I can talk about like code review for like 4 hours, and it's just like the total TAM for people that are interested in that type of thing is like not that large, and I think investors just have an easier time talking more abstractly about things that are more broadly interesting.
Yeah, that's fair. And then generally speaking, they're also better at talking about things that are more trendy. Like I guess in your case, if I'm like thinking about what the title, I actually have no idea what we're going to call this, but I'm sure there's like AI in the title. I'm sure the thumbnail, there was like some AI thing. So it's like kind of trendy, but generally as a founder, like you might not even know what's cool because you're just not paying attention to, like you're just focusing on whatever you're doing versus, like most VCs could recite why Web3 is going to be a thing, like why every code review should have an NFT because NFTs, like, everything should be on the blockchain or whatever. Like you'd probably be like, yeah, that sounds stupid. But like an investor could tell you the pitch of like why everything's going to be on the blockchain in the future. So,
and just like, I don't know, but investors been right for like 12, 13 years. Like, like the best investors did see the future. Like, like, I don't know, like there's one side, which is just like I think over obsession around investors. And then I think that there's this other subculture of just like, oh, investors are dumb. And I think that's not true either. Like, it's like that. Like, I think the truth is that like all people, there's some investors like genuinely brilliant people. And like and then there are others that aren't, but like that's true for every category of person. That's true for founders too. I've met a lot of terrible founders, but also met a lot of like really, really incredible founders. I think this is true for everyone. And I think the discourse around it is just like, I think like feudalistic and tribalistic to some degree.
Yeah, you basically can't say that things are gray. They have to be black and white. Like you basically there must be a heuristic. And so anyways, well, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was great.
And thank you for listening. A quick thanks again to Numeral and Hanover Park for supporting this episode. Head to numeralhq.com for the fastest, easiest way to stay compliant with US sales tax and global VAT. And hanoverpark.com/Turner to upgrade your fund admin to the 21st century. If you missed it, make sure to check out last week's episode with Adit Abraham on everything he learned scaling Reducto from YC batch to a Series B in 18 months. But if you like this conversation, please comment, subscribe, share with a friend, and name your next PR review after me. If you don't want to miss a future episode, subscribe to my newsletter, The Split, linked in the description to get each episode plus a transcript emailed directly to your inbox every week. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.